My brothers and sisters, you've been lied to. You've been told that the difference between broke and rich is luck, or that it's about being born in the right family, or that it's about getting the perfect opportunity. Let me tell you the truth. The difference between broke and rich is one decision. Wealth is a mindset before it's a bank account. Most people think if they can just get more money, then their life will change. If they could land the right job, hit the right number in sales, win the lottery, or have someone give them a big break, then finally they'd be set. But money doesn't change your mindset. It only magnifies it. If you have a poverty mindset, more money will only amplify that poverty thinking. That's why some people win millions in the lottery and are broke again within a year. It's because the mind they brought into wealth couldn't handle what wealth requires. They were broke in their thinking, and broke thinking always sabotages prosperity. See, broke people think about what they don't have. Wealthy people think about what they can create. Broke people are stuck in survival. Wealthy people are moving in vision. Broke people see money as something they spend or save. Wealthy people see money as a tool they multiply. The difference is not the amount in the bank. The difference is the framework in the mind. You don't rise to the level of your desires. You rise to the level of your decisions. And your decisions are shaped by your mindset. Here's the challenge. Most people were trained from childhood to think broke. They heard their parents say things like, money doesn't grow on trees, or what can't afford that, or rich people are greedy. Those seeds got planted in their subconscious, and they grew up with a scarcity lens. That lens makes them believe there's only so much to go around. So when they get a little, they hoard it. They play small. They stay in jobs they hate because they're afraid to step out. They settle for less because they don't believe they're worthy of more. Wealthy people were either trained differently or retrained their mind. They understand there is no shortage in the world. There's no shortage of ideas, no shortage of opportunities, no shortage of money. Money is a result of solving problems, and problems are everywhere. So to wealthy thinkers, there's no ceiling. They know money is a reward for value creation, so they spend their time learning how to create more value. Broke thinkers are obsessed with spending less. Wealth thinkers are obsessed with earning more. Broke thinkers ask, how much does it cost? Wealth thinkers ask, what's the ROI? Broke thinkers want security. Wealth thinkers want freedom. Broke thinkers think about their paycheck. Wealth thinkers think about their net worth. These are all mindset shifts. Until they happen, no amount of working harder will change your financial life. You can hand two people the same opportunity, one with a broke mindset and one with a wealth mindset. The broke thinker will say, this is too risky. What if I fail? What if I lose what I have? The wealth thinker will say, what's the worst that can happen? If I lose, I'll learn. If I win, I'll multiply. One sees obstacles, the other sees options. This is why it's possible to be broke temporarily but rich mentally. Some people don't have much yet, but their mind is aligned with abundance. They are investing in themselves, studying, growing, and moving in faith. Eventually, their external world catches up with their internal reality. On the other hand, there are people with money in the bank but fear in their hearts. They're terrified of losing it. They don't trust themselves to grow it. They've got riches but not wealth. True wealth starts with how you think. If you want to shift from broke to rich, you must first shift from scarcity to abundance, from consumer to creator, from fear to faith. You have to start seeing money as a servant, not a master. You have to believe there's more than enough, and you are worthy of participating in that more than enough. Your mindset determines how you interpret the world. When you have a broke mindset, everything looks like a threat. When you have a wealth mindset, everything looks like an opportunity. Broke thinking says, it's too hard. Wealth thinking says, I'll find a way. Broke thinking says, someone needs to help me. Wealth thinking says, how can I help others and get rewarded for it? Broke thinking says, I can't afford that. Wealth thinking says, how can I afford that? Until you change how you think about money, you'll always sabotage your ability to keep and grow it. Wealth is an inside-out game. It doesn't matter what's in your hand if your mind is still in chains. You can lose everything and rebuild if you have the right mindset. And if you don't, you can gain everything and still live like you're broke. Broke and rich people make decisions from two different belief systems. The way you decide is shaped by what you believe about yourself, about money, and about the world. Broke thinkers decide from fear, doubt, and limitation. Rich thinkers decide from faith, confidence, and possibility. It's not just about what they decide. It's about how they make decisions and why they make them. That internal compass is the dividing line between staying stuck and stepping into abundance. When someone with a broke mindset faces a decision, they usually start by asking, what if this goes wrong? Their mind races to all the possible failures, the things they might lose, and the people who might criticize them. So their decisions are made to avoid pain instead of pursuing growth. They choose safety. They see the strength of it. They choose familiarity. They choose comfort. And in choosing comfort, they choose captivity. Every time they say no to opportunity because of fear, they reinforce the belief that they're not capable of more. That belief shapes their life. A person with a rich mindset faces the same decision and asks a different question. They ask, what if this works? What if this opens a door? What if this is the moment everything changes? Instead of focusing on what they could lose, they focus on what they could gain. They aren't reckless, but they understand that risk is part of the process. They know that nothing extraordinary comes without stepping into uncertainty. So they make decisions based on vision, not fear. The belief system of a broke thinker says, money is scarce, opportunities are rare. If I fail, I'll never recover. This belief system keeps them paralyzed. They don't invest in themselves because they see it as spending instead of sowing. They don't start businesses because they believe there's too much competition. They don't ask for what they're worth because they're afraid of rejection. So they shrink their decisions to fit their fears, and their life shrinks to match those decisions. The belief system of a rich thinker says, money is abundant. Opportunities are everywhere. If I fail, I'll learn and grow stronger. This belief system creates boldness. They invest in their own growth because they know knowledge compounds. They start businesses because they believe enough room for them to succeed. They ask for what they're worth because they understand value creation. So their decisions stretch them and their life expands to match those decisions. Imagine people are presented with the chance to invest $5,000 in learning a new skill that could triple their income. The broke thinker immediately says, I can't afford that. What if it doesn't work? What if I waste my money? They don't even consider how they could afford it or what they might gain. They let fear answer for them. The rich thinker says, if I learn this, how quickly can I earn back that $5,000? How can I leverage this skill for the rest of my life? They let possibility answer for them. That single decision separates their paths forever. This is why rich and broke are not about how much money someone has in the moment. It's about the framework that drives their choices. Someone can be flat broke financially, but rich in their belief system, and those decisions will pull them into prosperity over time. Another person can be rich financially, but broke in their belief system, and their poor decisions will drag them back into lack. Decision making is not neutral. Every choice you make is either taking you toward wealth or away from it. Every yes and every no reveals your core beliefs. If you believe you're worthy of wealth, you'll say yes to growth and no to distractions. If you believe wealth is only for others, you'll say yes to fear and no to opportunities. Broke thinkers believe they have to see the whole staircase before they take the first step. Rich thinkers don't just need to take the first step and trust the staircase will appear. When broke thinkers decide, they focus on cost. When rich thinkers decide, they focus on value. Broke thinkers decide emotionally. Rich thinkers decide strategically. Broke thinkers hesitate and second guess until opportunities expire. Rich thinkers decide quickly and course correct as they go. These patterns don't happen by accident. They are rooted in years of conditioning and internalized beliefs. Your decisions don't just reveal your beliefs. They reinforce them. Every decision you make teaches your mind what to expect from you. If you consistently decide from fear, your mind will expect fear to run the show. If you start deciding from faith and vision, your mind will rise to meet the level of those decisions. That's how transformation begins, not with money, but with the decision to think and act differently. One decision can break generational cycles of lack. For many people, the financial patterns they are living in didn't start with them. They were born into families where scarcity thinking was normal, where debt was a way of life, where money was always a source of stress and arguments. They inherited more than just physical features from their parents. They inherited limiting beliefs, poor financial habits, and sometimes even trauma around wealth. But the truth is that while you may have been born into it, you don't have to stay in it. You can be the one to make a decision that shifts the direction of your entire family line. Every generational cycle is fueled by decisions. Someone in the past decided to settle for less because they didn't see another way. Someone decided to avoid risk because they were afraid of losing what little they had. Someone decided to numb their frustration with consumer spending because it gave them a temporary sense of control. Those decisions created in the family where lack was accepted as normal and wealth was seen as unattainable or even undesirable. If no one interrupts that pattern, it continues. But it only takes one person to stand up and decide the cycle ends here. One person to say, just because no one in my family built doesn't mean I can't. One person to decide to think differently, to act differently, to live differently. That one decision is like planting a new seed in the soil of the family tree. It doesn't just affect that one person. It creates a harvest that future generations will eat from. The power of one decision is often underestimated because people assume they need to change everything at once. They think they have to have all the answers, all the resources, all the support. But it doesn't work that way. The most important shift happens inside. The decision to break the cycle starts in the heart and mind long before it shows up in the bank account. It's a decision to refuse to normalize struggle, a decision to pursue financial literacy, a decision to trade instant gratification for long-term transformation. When you make that decision, resistance will come. People in your circle may not understand. Some will try to pull you back into the old patterns because it exposes their comfort with mediocrity. They might say, why are you trying to do all that? Nobody in this family has ever been rich. They see just be grateful for what you have. That's when you have to remember that if you don't break the cycle, your children and grandchildren will have to fight the same battles you're fighting now. Someone has to pay the price for change. The decision to break the cycle isn't just about money. It's about identity. It's about deciding that you are not defined by your family's history. It's about deciding that you are capable of creating something new. It's about deciding that you will become the example of what's possible. That decision unlocks creativity, discipline, and persistence you didn't know you had. Generational cycles are powerful because they are reinforced by repetition. But that power works both ways. The same way lack has been reinforced by years of small, fear-based decisions, wealth can be reinforced by years of intentional, faith-based decisions. Every time you choose to invest instead of waste, every time you choose to learn instead of complain, every time you choose to create value instead of consume mindlessly, you are reinforcing a new cycle. One decision can be the spark that lights the fire of generational wealth. That decision might look like starting a business, paying off debt, learning about investing, or teaching your children how money works. Whatever it looks like, it's not about the size of the step, but the direction. You can't always see the impact of the decision right away. It might take years before the fruit appears, but rest assured, the seeds you plant today will grow. Generational cycles are like rivers. For years, the current has been flowing in one direction. When you decide to turn it, there will be resistance, but if you keep paddling, the river will eventually change course. And once the current shifts, those who come after you won't have to paddle as hard because you already broke the hardest part. That is the power of one decision. ChatGPT said comfort is the enemy of abundance. Most people don't fail because they're not capable. They fail, they're too comfortable where they are. Comfort whispers lies that sound like truth. It tells you they see their strength and they're surviving. At least you enough to get by. Don't risk too much because you might lose what you have. That voice of comfort convinces people to settle for less than they're capable of, and over time, settling becomes a habit. The danger of comfort is that it feels good in the moment, but it robs you of growth, purpose, and ultimately wealth. When you choose comfort, you are choosing stagnation. Nothing grows in the comfort zone because growth requires stretching, and stretching is uncomfortable. A seed cannot sprout without breaking. Muscles cannot grow without tension. Wealth cannot be created without stepping into uncertainty. But most people avoid discomfort because they confuse it with danger. Discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is the signal that you are stepping beyond the limits of what you've known and into the space where transformation happens. People say they want abundance, but their actions say they want comfort more, but they want financial freedom, but they don't want to invest the time, energy, and resources to learn how money works. They want to build a business, but they don't want to face rejection, failure, or the discipline it takes to succeed. They want to create wealth for their families, but they don't want to give up the habits of instant gratification that keep them broke. So they stay where they are, convincing themselves that someday they'll move. But someday never comes because comfort is addictive. The comfort zone keeps you safe from failure, but it also keeps you safe from success. It's a cage disguised as a blessing. You don't feel the bars because they're made of convenience. You don't notice the lock because it's made of routines you enjoy. But as long as you're inside, you can't access the possibilities waiting for you on the outside. Abundance lives beyond the boundaries of your comfort zone. It's in the phone calls you're afraid to make, the skills you're afraid to learn, the risks you're afraid to take. Until you step beyond comfort, you'll never step into abundance. Think about the people you admire, the ones who built wealth, created impact, and changed their lives. Every one of them had to sacrifice comfort to get. They woke up earlier than they wanted to. They worked harder than they felt like. They invested money they were scared to lose. They faced rejection, criticism, and moments of doubt. But they understood that comfort and growth cannot coexist. You have to choose one. When you prioritize comfort, you avoid the very things that would make you grow. You avoid having hard conversations about money. You avoid asking for help or mentorship. It feels vulnerable. You avoid making big moves because you don't want to feel fear. But fear is part of the process. If you only do what feels easy, you'll never develop the strength to handle more. Abundance doesn't just require resources, it requires a stronger version of you. That version is only born in discomfort. Comfort also blinds you to opportunity. When you're comfortable, you stop looking for ways to grow. You stop noticing the doors opening around you because you're too busy protecting what you already have. People who are too comfortable often miss their season of breakthrough because they're unwilling to be inconvenienced. They think they can stay the same and somehow attract more. But abundantly flows to those who are willing to expand their capacity. Breaking free from comfort requires intention. It's not a one-time decision, it's a daily practice. Every day you will be tempted to choose what feels good over what creates growth. Every day you will have to between staying the same or stepping forward. The challenge is that growth rarely feels good in the moment. It feels hard, awkward, even painful, but that pain is temporary. The reward is lasting. Comfort gives you temporary peace, but permanent limits. Discomfort gives you temporary struggle, but permanent expansion. You have to ask yourself which one you're willing to live with. The life you want is on the other side of actions you've been avoiding because they feel uncomfortable. Wealth doesn't show up in your life by accident. They shows up when you decide you're no longer available for small thinking and small actions and small results. That decision will cost you comfort, but it will open the door to everything you say you desire. You don't need more resources, you need to be more resourceful. Most people, the reason they're stuck is because they don't have enough. Not enough money, not enough time, not enough connections, not enough education. They can convince themselves that if they just had more, they would take action, then they would pursue their dreams, then they would build wealth. But lack of resources is never the real problem. The real problem is lack of resourcefulness. It's not about what's in your hand, it's about what's in your mind. Resourceful people create opportunities out of limitations. They don't wait for perfect condition because they understand perfect conditions never come. Instead of saying, I can't start because I don't have everything I need, they ask, how can I start with what I have right now? That question unlocks creativity. It shifts the focus from what's missing to what's possible. Broke thinkers are obsessed with what they don't have, while thinkers are obsessed with how to maximize what they do have. Most of the wealthiest people in the world didn't start with abundance. They started with an idea, a decision, and relentless resourcefulness. They didn't have money to hire help, so they learned the skills themselves. They didn't have investors, so they bootstrapped and reinvested every dollar they earned. They didn't have connections, so they built relationships through persistence and value. They didn't have all the answers, so they asked better questions and figured it out as they went. That's resourcefulness. It's the ability to create more from less. They see the strength of the people often say, I would invest in my growth if I had more money, but they don't see how that mindset keeps them trapped. The truth is, if you're not willing to invest when you have little, you won't be willing to invest when you have more. Resourceful people find a way. They sell what they don't need. They pick up extra income streams. They cut unnecessary expenses. They're not limited by what's in their wallet because they're unlimited in their thinking. The danger of focusing on resources is that it creates a dependency mentality. You start believing that your success depends on something outside of you, a boss giving you a raise, a client saying yes, a bank approving your loan. But when you embrace resourcefulness, you take back your power. You stop waiting for doors to open and start building your own doors. You stop asking for permission and start creating solutions. Resourceful people are unstoppable because they don't need ideal circumstances to move forward. Scarcity thinking says, I don't have enough, so I can't act. Resourceful thinking says, I will act, and in the process, I will create more than enough. This mind shift is crucial because it turns obstacles into opportunities. A person lacking resources sees a closed door and walks away. A resourceful person sees a closed door and finds a window. If there's no window, they'll build a ladder and climb over the wall. If there's no wall, they'll pave a new path altogether. Resourcefulness isn't about what's available. They see it's about refusing to quit until you get where you're going. When you study people who broke out of poverty, you notice a common trait. They didn't have the luxury of waiting for perfect circumstances. They leveraged every skill, every connection, every bit of knowledge they had. They took jobs, didn't like to fund the business they wanted to build. They borrowed books from the library when they couldn't afford courses. They worked on their dream after hours when others were watching television. That's the mindset that turns lack into legacy. Every breakthrough begins with resourcefulness. You may not have capital, but you have time and energy you can invest. You may not have mentors yet, but you have access to knowledge through books, podcasts, and videos. You may not have the perfect plan, but you can take imperfect action and learn along the way. Resourcefulness doesn't require ideal tools. It requires a relentless commitment to find a way forward. Most people overestimate what resources they need to get started and underestimate how much progress they could make if they became more resourceful. The truth is, wealth doesn't come from access to more stuff. It comes from access to better thinking. Money follows solutions, and solutions are born in the mind of a resourceful person.
God's presence remains constant, sustaining, redeeming, and completing all things. In a world that constantly changes, where kingdoms rise and fall, where lives shift from joy to sorrow and back again, the enduring presence of God stands as an unshakable foundation. His presence is not bound by time or place. It does not depend on circumstances or human faithfulness. It is eternal, active, and deeply personal. From the first breath of creation to the final restoration of all things, God has remained near, not as a passive observer, but as the living force who sustains the universe moment by moment. In the vastness of space and the hidden workings of the smallest cell, His sustaining power is present. The breath in our lungs, the gravity that holds planets in orbit, the seasons that cycle with precision, all exist because God upholds them by the power of His word. Creation continues not because of its own strength, but because of His ongoing will. He did not simply create and retreat. He continues to nourish, guide, and empower all that He made. The sun rises because He ordains it. The rivers flow because He directs them. The heart beats because He sustains it. His presence is not occasional or conditional. It is the steady foundation beneath everything. God's presence also carries with it the power of redemption. In the face of human failure, rebellion, and suffering, He does not withdraw. Instead, He moves closer. He enters into the depths of human pain, not to condemn but to redeem. This redeeming presence is what sets Him apart from all others. When humanity strayed, He did not abandon them. When sin spread like a disease through the hearts of men, He came with healing. When darkness seemed to win, He revealed light that could not be extinguished. The story of redemption is not only a historical event, but an ongoing reality that flows from His nearness. His presence is revealed in the quiet whisper to the prophet, in the fire that does not consume, in the cloud that leads through the wilderness, in the stillness that calms the storm. It is found in the breaking of bread, in the comfort of prayer, in the conviction of truth, and in the strength to endure suffering. God is not absent from the places of greatest sorrow. In fact, those are often the places where His presence is most profoundly revealed. The valleys of life do not diminish His nearness, they often magnify it. And beyond sustaining and redeeming, His presence brings completion. The God who began a good work in creation and in individual lives is also the one who will bring it to completion. He does not leave things undone. His nature is not partial or unfinished. The arc of time bends toward wholeness because He is at work in every chapter, every life, every moment. The presence of God is the assurance that what has been started in love will be perfected in glory. He refines, restores, renews, and brings all things into alignment with His perfect will. This constant presence transcends our understanding, yet it can be experienced in the deepest parts of the soul. It is not limited to cathedrals or sacred moments. It permeates the ordinary. In the silence of solitude, in the chaos of crisis, in the joy of celebration, and in the daily routine, His presence is there. It is the anchor for the drifting, the light for the wandering, the strength for the weak, and the peace for the restless. There is no distance too great, no darkness too thick, no burden too heavy that His presence cannot reach and transform. Through every high and low, through every age and season, God remains Emmanuel, God with us, unmoving, unshaken, unceasing in His work to sustain, redeem, and complete all that He has made.